All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming. I'm Zach Samsel, and I'm the director of the environmental programs here at Pinoleville, and that is our water quality specialist, Ilena Pegan, and we collaborated here on this presentation to basically teach you how to avoid toxins in your home by shopping for safe alternative products. We're going to kind of give you a breakdown, show you some ways to implement these things, give you a little bit of background, and just kind of get you familiar with the idea of toxics and how to eliminate those within the house. For starters, we should probably answer the question, are there toxins in your home? And the answer is, sadly, yes. Typically, some of the poisonous products that can be found in your home are listed here. You'll see things that are typical like soap, detergent, stain removers, pesticides, glue, those types of things. And they all vary to different degrees, but in the end, the ingredients in most of these can be considered poisonous and are something to be kind of mindful of. In fact, actually, let's talk about some of the hazards that may come from these. Obviously, on the left, you've got that list of items that we just kind of went through. And some of the things that you'll see recurring here as far as the hazards go, these products can be an eye and skin irritant. We've all gotten like a little bleach on our hand and felt itchy or something like that, and that's one of those examples. Another way is through headaches, nausea, dizziness, coughing, shortness of breath. I think we've all, opened up a cleaning product and kind of had to, catch our breath and get some fresh air before, and that's sadly one of those hazards. In fact, and it does take repeated exposure, but some of the issues that may arise are kidney, liver, lung, and nervous system damage. Now, don't get too afraid. It's a prolonged thing, but it's something to be aware of when using these products over years and years. Some of the hidden dangers include the fact that there are less than about 80,000 chemicals registered with poison control, etc., and really only 10% of our known, we have the health and environmental effects. Another further problem is the fact that traditional testing of these products may only examine one of the chemicals. It may look at one ingredient and see if it's toxic, but in reality, when combined with other chemicals, it can become even worse. Another one of the issues, and I think that we've all kind of noticed this even if it didn't affect us directly, are the residues. We've all used furniture polish on a desk, and then when you got done it looked kind of filmy, and you obviously thought, oh, I'm not going to put my hand in my mouth now. But with children and pets, there's a good chance they're going to touch that, get it in their mouth, and then they've been exposed. In fact, almost 10% of all toxic exposures were reported due to exposure to a cleaning product. And almost half of those happen to children 5 years old or younger. Obviously that's a concern, and that's why we want to try to help you, because as adults, it's one thing to recognize these. As a kid, we've got to be able to look out for them. Now, typically some of the issues that you'll run into disinfecting, three big ones: ammonia, bleach, and phenols. As far as ammonia goes, I think we're all pretty familiar with it. It's got a terrible smell. It can eat away at paint, skin, other things like that. And like it says, there's possible damage to the eyes, liver, kidneys, and lungs without ventilation. Bleach, we know a lot about that. Everybody spilled a little bit on some clothes and had that white spot that kind of rots away. And sadly, most of the accidental poisoning of children less than 6 years old is from bleach. It looks like water, and it's one of those things, you've got to be cognizant of it. And in fact, actually, bleach and ammonia together release a toxic gas. And how often do you have areas that you might clean where those two things might come together on accident without even realizing? And then lastly, phenols are what you find in different sprays, liquids, and wiping disinfectants like Clorox wipes, etc. And they can be corrosive to the eyes and skin, possibly cause issues with pregnancy, etc. So what are some of the disinfecting non-toxic solutions? Obviously, soap and hot water and a little elbow grease is typically going to work in most situations. And you need to be mindful of the fact that if you want to disinfect, use the least toxic disinfectant and use it appropriately. That's one of the key things. Look at the instructions, follow those. They're not there just to look cool. Basically, most products are ranked from most toxic to least toxic. Some of the worst are chlorine, all the way down to hydrogen peroxide, which obviously isn't nearly as bad, but is still technically within that realm of toxicity. Now the question becomes, what exactly can you do in your home to be able to implement these things and try and reduce the amount of toxins that you're dealing with? For starters, educate yourself. Read the labels. You know, sometimes there's going to be parts on there that sound like stereo instructions, and I understand, I skip past that too. But when they explain recommended usage, dosage, you know, however it's worded on the package, it's a good idea to pay attention to that, because that's typically in the realm of the way that, you know, tests of toxicity were done. Next thing, you really want to use the least amount of product for the job. If it says that it can clean a window a certain size with 2 squirts, you don't need 3. Nobody's handing out bonus points for getting it extra clean, as much as your brain may say, I feel as if I need to do this. The next one, and this is tough because everything has an aroma these days, is to avoid scented products. That scent that's in there is nothing but a toxic chemical. That doesn't smell that way because of something wonderful and organic, as much as that, you know, hurts to say. Another one is to avoid aerosols, and that's kind of the typical can that you see, like hairspray, the Febreze, those sort of things. And then once again, look at the packaging. A lot of times you can find out from looking at the package exactly what they're working with and the way that it's advertised. Typically, you know, you're going to see green on labels where they're trying to explain the benefits, which actually leads to, what are some of the things that you need to look for on labels? Because, I mean, the back of those are filled with hundreds of words, so what are the quick things to search for? The signal words. Danger. Caution. And I'm sure that those seem familiar. We've all seen those on labels before, right? And basically, those words actually have a very specific meaning to the level of toxicity and how hazardous it is. It starts with the most dangerous, which is poison. And that basically, in translation, means it's highly toxic and good for no one in terms of exposure, ingestion, those types of things. The next degree below that, just like the label you see, is danger. That typically means the product is flammable, corrosive, or highly toxic, and none of those sound like fun, am I right? The next level below that is then warning, which is a moderate hazard, something to be mindful of. You know, it may end up making your clothes stained or something like that. Not always the end of the world. And then lastly is caution, which means it's a mild or moderate hazard, just like the label you can see up there that says, you know, harmful if swallowed, skin and eye irritant. That sort of situation. So, as we continue to talk about what else to look on labels, we kind of dive in there. You want to look at the list of ingredients. Not always does the FDA, Federal Poison Control, the different government agencies, they don't always require it to be listed, but you can bet that if a product is worth what they've put behind it in advertising and design, they're typically going to list those things because you take pride in what's in there. You also need to be mindful that you may only be looking at a partial list. It may just list the typical ingredients that created it, but not the hazardous materials, because there are no exact guidelines for that, which makes it kind of ambiguous. Then you also want to look at the active ingredient. That's typically going to be the determinant as to whether or not it's toxic or not. And in terms of active ingredients, you just kind of have to get familiar through, you know, reading, research, that type of stuff. Specifically, what you're going to then look for within these labels are the health effects. Quite often there will be a warning after the instructions that say, you know, do not swallow, those types of things. Make sure you pay attention to that, it's important. And then next is one that often gets overlooked. I've done it myself, you know, I'm guilty as charged, but is the use of personal protective equipment and disposal requirements. A lot of times products say use in a ventilated room or use with a mask, prevent eye irritation. That's not to be funny, that's to be able to help you so that you don't incur any further injuries or exposure. Now, what are some of the safe methods to be able to minimize the exposure? That actually leads back to ventilating the area. If you need to bleach something, it's probably a good idea to have a window open. You already know that it smells funky and you don't want to breathe in any more than you have to. Another way is to use a drip tray. Let's say you take, you're cleaning off a spill at the end of this table. Put something down so that as you're wiping it, it's not getting into the carpet and slowly but surely adding to the, macrobiotic processes that are happening down there. And then, as we said before, use the personal protective equipment. As much as, the glasses and mask and stuff look silly, they're there for a reason, and it's a good idea to follow those instructions. Which is the very last thing, read and follow the label directions. It's as simple as that. Now, the next thing is, alright, we've talked about kind of how to avoid that exposure, how to limit our usage and stuff, but then where do we put these things? Well, for starters, make sure you leave the product in its original container. It may be nice that you've got a convenient spray bottle you can take somewhere, but once it's in that bottle, a lot of knowledge is lost because the label isn't there. So keep those things in their original container so that then also someone else could use it and have a good idea as to what's going on. Then secondly, you want to store on high shelves and locked cabinets. That just makes sense. We don't want kids accidentally getting into these things under the sink. Obviously, keep everything dry. If you've got a product, that the end kind of gets wet as you're squirting it, dry that up, because if that ends up dripping, the next thing you know, you've started, another kind of process and exposure. And then lastly, keep all of the lids on tight and sealed. You don't want those things, somewhat kind of evaporating out of there and then filling the air, thus creating even further problems. Now the next issue is, what else can you do? Particularly in the future when you go shopping for cleaning products, we want you to search for less toxic alternatives. Kind of some of the things that we've got listed here that we'll break down. Now you're wondering, where can you find a lot of these? Obviously, the Ukiah Co-op has the biggest selection of these natural products, and they're actually at competitive prices when compared to Safeway and Walmart. Particularly, you want to look for kind of the default good-to-go brands, 7th Generation, Dr. Bronner's, and Planet. If you see a product made by those, the entire name of their game is to keep things natural and toxic-free. Lastly, you can also look for these labels. These have become kind of universal symbols that are often on a lot of products that are eco, smart, green, whatever term that they want to use. The last one obviously is very important, EPA. We thank them for a lot of the information that we're providing you today. Now, lastly, what is some of the environmental impact here? Specifically, we're looking for products that are plant-based and not petroleum-based, because you'd be amazed looking through some of these labels as to how many different oil-based products are coming from there. You want things that are concentrated, from oranges as opposed to from a lab. As we said, avoid aerosols like the Febreze and go for a pump spray so that it's regulated. And look for products that are packaged in recycled contents. In fact, actually, this window cleaner is, I believe, the packaging is 20% recycled materials. They advertise that on there because they want you to know that's the name of their game, just like we said before. Now, the one thing we do need to mention, though, is to watch out for what is being called greenwashing. And that's a lot of products that might use a green label or a green name like Nature and then Nature Clean, or where they kind of try to hint that it's natural, knowing fully well that it's not. In fact, that bleach spray down there is a good example of trying to mislead people. It's green, it looks fancy and futuristic, but in reality it's just a big cup of cleaner and bleach. Now, all of that aside, you want to be able to find out more products. Obviously, we've got kind of 10 different things listed here, but in the future, because it gets even, there are products that are even less toxic than some of them listed here, and you want to check the ewg.org website where they have a search engine. You can basically type in Dr. Bronner's and it'll list all of their products, and it's got a scale from A to F, just like in school, ranking the toxicity of each of the products. You want to try to avoid the Fs as much as possible, find the As when you can, and just try to find that healthy balance between the two. I recommend keeping that, you know, in your bookmarks, because before you go shopping or while you're at the store, it's worth looking up. In fact, actually, we were using that search engine in assembling this list of products that we've got here today, actually. And in fact, we will, just to give you kind of a case-by-case idea, we're going to break down some of these products that we've purchased here. We actually got all of these at Walmart, so you don't have to think, oh no, I don't shop at the co-op, I usually go to Walmart, it's just more convenient. All of these were available right there, and we can take a second and just kind of go through the different areas and see which alternative products are available.